Hi, it's Morgan Fischer again. It's vlog number 6 on January 23rd, 2017. This is day 18 of our trip, and we are currently in Hamburg, Germany. And we got here yesterday. We leave tomorrow, so it's been a quick trip, but we've done some really important stuff while we've been here, so that's been great. I'm going to talk about the reading we did over Hitler's rhetoric and our trip to Bergen-Belsen compared to our trip to Auschwitz, and then just connect a few other things. So we read something about Hitler's rhetoric, and I was really interested in this because I haven't heard anything about his life story before this. I had no background into his life, and I find it that if I can relate to someone's mind, I might be able to understand the whole picture more. And I don't think there is a way to understand the whole picture of what happened during the Holocaust, but I think it's really important to just know as much as you can about everything you possibly can. So I appreciated reading this Hitler piece. One thing I didn't realize was how Hitler had gone through a time of poverty himself, and that's kind of what brought him into this obsession with people who might have more than him. He was really struggling. He had some time in Vienna when he was actually writing Mein Kampf, and this is kind of his time when he realized that he was in a lower economic point than the other people of the world were, specifically Jews, and that if he was going to try to help the world, then he would just eliminate them so that other people wouldn't be in the same economic stance as he was and they could be the higher up. And so he attacked them. He attacked the Jews. He made everyone hate him. He created the common enemy, which, as we've talked about in class, that's how you join together. First, in order to make a group of people, the strongest way to create a group of people is to create a common enemy. And people will usually follow that common enemy if they're talked into it. And so, through Mein Kampf and through his rise to power, Hitler created the common enemy of the Jews, and it spread to more people than just the Jews. And we've really talked a lot about the fact that it wasn't just the Jews, which is something that I think is kind of skipped over in history lessons. The Jews were the most affected, but there were also the Polish people that we talked about, and the people who went against Hitler's beliefs and the Nazis' party's beliefs. So I think it's really eye-opening to hear how that common enemy was brought about and how he got people to follow along with it. Today we went to Bergen-Belsen, and I really had no idea what to expect on that. In my head, it was going to be somewhat like Auschwitz, but I didn't really realize that it wasn't a complete death camp. It was a labor camp, and I thought it was really interesting. One of the first statistics they give you in Auschwitz is how many people died. And it's this huge number, and it's meant to stun you. Well, at Bergen-Belsen, I didn't figure out how many people died until I read it on the wall. He said that some thousands of people had died, but he never gave an exact number. And according to a wall, nearly 15,000 people died there. And it's a much smaller camp. At Auschwitz, I had no idea the size of it, and it just seemed like we kept walking forever, and you couldn't see the other side. And at Bergen-Belsen, it was substantially smaller, but it held so many people at once. An interesting thing was that families were kept together. And it didn't actually start out as a camp for the Jews to go to. It started out as a prisoner of war camp, as well as it was next to a German training facility for their soldiers. So it didn't start out specifically as a death camp, and I think that's why it didn't move into one. It just turned into a place for kind of the special Jews, if I can say that, the people who got papers to go to another country, but then were captured before they could. So technically they were residents of one of the neutral countries, so then they came to this camp instead. And the majority of people that died from disease instead of the gas chambers. There weren't any gas chambers in Bergen-Belsen. So those are some differences that I noticed. One thing that really stuck with me was there was an article on the wall in the museum at Bergen-Belsen that talked about how the people on the outside could see in the camp for a while, and how they wanted to see what these prisoners were living like and what the conditions were like. And when they did see, they wanted to help, I guess, and so they threw in food and clothes and water over this fence. But in my head, as I read that, the only thing I could think of was throwing a tiny pebble of food into a fishbowl, or a piece of bread into a duck pond, and having all of them attack it. And they fight for that piece of food, and these people on the outside were basically treating the people on the inside of the camp like animals, which kind of goes along with the common enemy, because they saw these people as not full people. They didn't see these prisoners as people, they saw them as pieces or as animals, and they treated them like that. And that really stuck with me, because I think that happens in today's world too, only it's more, you see a picture of people and it's just a picture. I see a picture in the news and I don't think, oh man, well, I might think for a minute, oh man, those poor people. But it doesn't stick with me like I wish it would. And so this has taught me that when I see things, I need to think of them as full people. Yes, it is just a picture in a newspaper or on my Facebook, but I think I need to push harder, and I need to look forward to more ways to help the people that are struggling. So that's how I can connect it. Along with the camera articles that we read earlier, I brought my camera to Bergen-Belsen, and then I left it in the bus by choice because I got there and decided that I didn't think it was appropriate still to take pictures. I took a few pictures inside the museum of things that I wanted to keep in my head and remember for a longer period of time, but that was just in the museum. When we were outside, I really didn't feel comfortable. There is a cemetery in Bergen-Belsen. There are memorials set up, but it doesn't do justice to how many people died there and how much there is to know. And I just wanted to soak it all in my head. If I go back ever again, I might take pictures, but it still just doesn't seem appropriate. So, no pictures from the outside of Bergen-Belsen, just the memories in my head that hopefully will stay there forever. And that will really help me to memorize what all happened to these people. And I just have to keep remembering that the world isn't as knowledgeable about this as I wish they were, and the only way to make them more knowledgeable, like all of these survivors have told countless people, is that the way to save the future is to remember the past. So I'm going to work really hard to remember the past through this trip that we've had, and just teach people more about all of the things that took place, and the fact that so many people knew what was happening inside those walls from the outside, and try to use that to push myself to not be a bystander and not treat other people or other things like animals or objects, and treat them like real people, and just work for the better of everything. So that is what I know at this point. We have 2 days left on the trip, and then I'll make the final vlog next.